Welcome to Real Talk for Real Fundraisers, the podcast where fundraisers, nonprofit leaders, and industry experts come together to vent, laugh, and learn. Through candid storytelling and insightful interviews, we explore the highs, lows, and everything in between. With a fearless, irreverent, and conversational tone, we're breaking down barriers, challenging the status quo, and creating a safe space to tackle the real struggles of the nonprofit world, one honest conversation at a time. Now here's your host, Jeff Schreifels.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. Today, I have as our guest, Christopher Beck. Christopher is the social director of individual and plan giving for the High Museum in Atlanta, and he's been a frontline fundraiser for over 20 years. He's also very active as a board member for AADO, Daylight Advisors, and membership co-chair for the Georgia Plan Giving Council. And he also works very closely with AFP Global, and he's been a mentor for fundraisers of color around the country. So let's bring Christopher on and let's get into some real talk. Hey, Christopher, great to have you.
Jeff, what's going on, man?
How are you?
Hey, man, no complaints, man. You know, it's the holiday season, so we good.
Yeah, it's holiday season. You're in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I'm in Philly area.
Yep.
Sorry about your Falcons. I don't know if you follow them, but they're not doing so great.
Hey, man, listen. I am a realist. Hear me. I'm a realist Dallas Cowboy fan.
Oh,
so what that
that's
means
even worse. That's even worse.
So let me tell you what that means, right? My goal is for the Cowboys to go 500 every year. That's my goal. That's my realistic goal.
Wow, you really set the bar high.
Hey, I'm just saying, man. You know, hey, that November thing is real for us, man. So I'm just saying.
All right. Well, for our listeners, Chris and we've known each other for a few years now. And I've been thinking about Real Talk for Real Fundraisers and really wanting to also I think part of Real Talk for Real Fundraisers is talking about equity, equality, all the issues around DEI issues that we've had, and, you know, really delving into a lot of the issues with fundraisers of color. And I thought of Christopher as a great guest. But then as I started really thinking, I'm like, we need to do more than just have one podcast about, what's the plight of, fundraisers of color? We really should do something more than that and really get in depth about issues and have a real discussion about it. And that means that, I really want to set aside at least once a month or so, having a discussion with Christopher and I as co-hosts, really, of this, where we really get into those issues. We have guests on, all of those things that, where we can have more time spending on the issues rather than just, one podcast on this. So for 2026, we really want together kind of delve into some of those issues. But Chris, before we get into all of that, I'd really love to hear your story. Talk about your journey as a fundraiser, how we met, why we're doing this, all that kind of stuff. So why don't you talk a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. And look, first of all, let me just share, man. Thank you for your willingness since we've met, right? You've always, I remember my first phone call, you were very serious. It was in the height of COVID, actually, I remember.
Yeah.
And the unrest. And you were really passionate about and just really wanted to do something. And I got to be honest, I was like, is this guy for real, But then the more I got to know you, you really have put your time and your effort and your money behind it, like real talk. So I want to say, really appreciate that, man, because it's what it's going to take going forward, right? But a little bit about me. I got my career started back in Nashville, Tennessee, with the Boy Scouts of America. Shout out to the Boy Scouts. And I didn't, and people may not know this, but my actual degree is in teaching. So
is mine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And so, man, listen, I taught in an underserved part of town at the time. And that's probably was my first time realizing that it was kind of a difference in economics. I was kind of sheltered as a kid in a good way. I love my upbringings. It was good, you know what I mean? But
Mhm.
it's probably my first time kind of just seeing economic imbalance, right?
Yeah.
And so the school I taught in, again, under resourced. And so we would have to go and get the kids after Labor Day, like literally go door knocking, right? Getting the kids
Yeah.
to come, right? And so I'll never forget this. One of my students at the time, I didn't realize it was his home. I knocked on the door and he came to the door. He was like 8, 9 at the most. He's like, Mr. Chris, Mr. Chris. I'm like, yeah, like, what's up, man? I was like, when you coming back to school? And he was like, and when he came to the door, like he had siblings that came behind him, but he was the oldest at 8 or 9.
Wow.
And I was like, ooh. I walked away from the house. I was like, okay, something's wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I said,
Yeah.
"Where's your mom?" And she was like, he was like, "She's working. She's not here." I'm like, "Okay." And gave him a little paper like, "Okay, I'll see you at school in a few weeks." But I walked away from that, like something's wrong,
Mm.
and I just felt like it was more that I could do. Right. So fast forward, I'm a person of faith, and so I made this list of things that I want to do in my next job. Right. It
Mhm.
was like make the community better, be all these crazy things, right? And so long story short, man, I end up applying for this job, didn't realize what it was, and they gave me a call. I didn't
Mhm.
know what it was because I'm a teacher slash fitness person. I was into fitness really big and didn't have any nonprofit experience. And they gave me an interview and they ended up giving me a ride day. And I took the ride day with this guy named Harold Witherspoon. Shout out to Harold, uh, great guy who became my boss. He's a good friend, mentor to today. He's like my brother to this day. But Harold taught me. He taught me how to do this work from a relational way, Jeff, and I'll never forget it. And I owe him everything outside of my faith. I owe him my career. But he taught me about relationship capital. And so,
Mhm.
long story short, I got the job with the Boy Scouts, and I served in an underserved part of town again. Like I keep getting these roles, right? In these underserved parts of town, and so I remember going, I'm about 6 months in, Jeff, and I'm going around and I'm going around and it's like people uh like, didn't, they just it's like it was a disconnect between what I was trying to do and kind of who they thought we were as an organization. So long story short, man, it was rough, just getting started. But I had some good Harold had a good boss, my other good friend, Samuel Jackson. It is his real name. His name is Samuel Jackson. Sam works for a foundation in Nashville. This other guy named Martez Moore, who also works for the Boy Scouts now, who his career has been in the Boy Scouts. And we kind of like we were the team. Like we were the team, and then we kind of just did our thing, and we really took scouting to another level in the area. But as I grew in my career, I also started to see that fundraising was a big thing, right? And so you fast forward, I get some other opportunities, and it's been good. I've been very fortunate to work with some great organizations, the Boy Scouts. I've been with St. Jude. Now I'm with the High Museum of Atlanta as the Associate Director of Individual and Planned Giving. And so it's been good. So I owe a lot of all of my career to my faith and my family and good people who've helped me along the way. But as we know, Jeff, things have really changed over, I'll say since COVID, right? The
Yeah.
unrest, things really, really, really changed a lot. From fundraising, how we go about fundraising to kind of this new donor landscape, all the things, man. It's just a very different world now. And I think as you alluded to some of the things that we're going to talk about in 2026, I think those topics are kind of really things that people need to keep top of mind going forward. And I think
Mhm.
if they don't, you're probably going to get left behind. And
Mhm.
that's really where you don't want to be because again, how we did fundraising 10 years ago is very much different in 2026, let alone 20 years ago, right? So
Yeah.
you have a different donor pool that's out here now. You have a shrinking middle class donor, but you got
Mhm.
crazy, right? You got more wealth than anything right now.
Mhm.
And you
Yeah.
got, I was looking at a figure the other day, the kind of the next gen and millionaire base grew by 17%, 35 and under, right? Grew
Yeah.
by 17%. Their wealth grew more than that of the boomers, which grew like
Yeah.
4% last year, right? So that tells you how things are shifting around.
Mhm.
And so if we don't adjust as a sector, if we don't adjust to kind of these new trends, yeah, we're going to be left behind.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So what's tell me your motivation for wanting to do, this co-hosting of Real Talk for Real Fundraisers,
Right.
really focusing on fundraisers of color and the issues surrounding nonprofits in that space. So,
Yeah. So I think now just the time is right. Right. I think there's no need to explain what's already been understood from
yeah.
2020 going forward. Right. So we know about that. We know what happened. Right. Enough said. Right. So now what does this new playbook look like? Right. And I
Mhm.
think for the most part, I was sharing with somebody recently, there's no, in my opinion, there's no secret sauce right now to kind of how you do this fundraising thing, right? I think the sauce is being made as we kind of in this new space. And I think how I go about it is kind of create this safe to fail method where fail fast. There are no failures, like you're just all learning, right? All
Yeah.
learnings. And so that's kind of how I operate, because right now things are changing by the day, right? Again,
Yeah.
you have again, I mentioned the next gen wealth, right? You got the great wealth transfer that's happening, right? I read another stat here recently that talked about in 2040, it's just a few years away, right? 2040, that the next gen group, that's Gen X and millennials, will own the lion's share of the wealth. Lion's
Yeah.
share.
Yeah.
Boomers and silent generation will only own about 12, 13% of it,
Yeah.
right? Then you got content creators and influencer marketing right now. That's, if I had to say, it's kind of this new direct mail thing. It's kind of in tandem with direct mail, right?
Mhm.
So so now it's the time, right? We have to figure out, how do we create this new ecosystem of charity work to engage funders and
Yeah.
potential funders.
Yeah.
And if you don't, as charities, if you don't kind of keep what you have currently, steward and build that, sunset things when you need to, but also try to build this new cadre of engagement tools. You got to be able to do both at the same time. And I think that's where a lot of people, some are saying, well, I'll just I'll keep my old methods of doing things, and that's fine. You totally have your choice to do that. But I will say, watch out, right? And
Yeah.
to throw in, I was talking to a friend yesterday. She's from Peru and she's in the charity space. She was talking about different communities, right? And so
Mhm.
we were talking about how now is, and respectfully, it used to be back in the day, middle-aged white guy writing a check, all the things, right? Well, now you now have communities, right? Hispanic,
Mhm.
API, Black, LGBTQ, Next Gen. So
Mhm.
if you're not, as a charity, as a director, if you don't have your tentacles in all those different communities, you're gonna be left out, because each one of
Yeah.
those communities now have fun. They have spending power, right? But
Yeah.
but but here's the deal: they give very differently, right?
Yeah.
One of my friends who's in the LGBT community, he was talking about how recently he went to an event, and somewhere, and he said he said he just didn't feel welcome, right? Not that anybody treated him bad, but he didn't feel the connection, right? He said something was missing, right? And
Yeah.
so now, as a director, as a charity leader, director of a charity, you have to figure out, how do you bring in and make everybody feel inclusive, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody, right? So
Yeah.
it's not enough just to be like, oh, it's like this.
Yeah.
No. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
So that's why this podcast, you say, well, why now? Because these are the current, I don't say issues, opportunities that we have to deal with in the sector. You
Yep.
can't hide behind it anymore. You can, if you want to, you can duck your head, right? But you're gonna lose out. And the other piece, and I'll let you share here in a second. I was also sharing yesterday with my friend that philanthropists are very, very sophisticated now, right?
Mhm.
And they have choices, right? Because you have the middle donor shrinkage is real. It's happening. Like, it's going on right now. But you have more wealth. So if you think about it, the philanthropist actually controls they have a lion's share of the landscape now, right? They can kind of
Mhm.
dictate to the charities kind of what they want, right? Meaning, I want access to your board. I want this. And if they don't get it, well, okay, well, I'll just go somewhere else, right? Until that charity can meet them kind of where they are.
Mhm.
And so that's a whole nother caveat. And I don't think people really think about that. I think about that, right? The
Mhm.
last count, actually, it was over 2 million charities, just 2 million charities in the US alone, that donors have to choose from. And
Mhm.
if, as a charity, if you can't meet that prospective donor kind of where they are, or even the current donor, make them feel like they're included or they have a voice, they'll just leave. Because they got choices. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's So that's why this podcast and others like this are going to be so crucial going forward.
Well, in prep for this podcast, you put together 5 really meaty questions that you wanted to ask me. And so I've been doing a deep dive because I'm like, I better have some good answers for Christopher. But as I got into it, I realized, well, these questions are really each one of these could be its own podcast. And so as I thought about it, we were talking about this, how let's go through these 5 here and kind of give a little overview of some of my thoughts around it. But then we want to take each one of these over the course of 2026, bring on some guests to really talk
Yep.
into those questions and amplify them a little more about what the answers really should be and where we should go. Because we were talking earlier where you said, you know what, we need to stop talking about everything and start doing some things, taking action. And at Veritas, we're all we're all about it's enough to talk about. We got to do this,
Right.
And so I just think I think now would be great if you could start asking me, let's get into these 5 questions.
Sure.
Because this really will set the tone for what we're going to talk about, especially the first part of 2026.
Right.
So why don't you get into it?
Let's do it, man. All right.
Let's do it.
So question number 1, the current equity barrier. From your consulting perspective, what is the single biggest equity barrier you see right now in the typical nonprofit fundraising office, either in their staff, board, or donor base, that is actively limiting their revenue potential?
Yeah. So I did a lot of thought on this. And so I think the single persistent equity barrier in nonprofit fundraising is really the homogeneity in decision-making power, meaning there's only white men really making decisions, particularly within boards and senior development leadership. And too often, I think individuals are setting fundraising strategy, proving campaigns, they're defining what is success in philanthropy from that narrow cultural and, socioeconomic background. So what happens then, the result of that is that messaging fails to resonate with diverse communities, right? If only white people are setting the tone, it may not hit well with people of diverse communities. And then the networks that circulate within they're all about the same circles of wealth and influence. We're not moving beyond that. And then hiring practices really, it really replicates the dominant culture. So you hire white folks, you limit innovation. And I mean, I think what happens is you're not really authentic. So it's not just a moral thing to create equity. It's really a structural thing that needs to happen, because otherwise organizations, they're just kind of fishing in the same small donor pond. They're neglecting other broader networks of wealth and in communities of color, immigrant communities, the younger LGBTQ values-driven donors, they're being left out. And so I think the decision-making power, that's the biggest thing right now. That's the barrier for equity.
Appreciate that, Jeff. That's huge, man. Again, guys, these are just some of the questions, right? So we give you guys a little teaser, right?
Yeah.
So number 2, the financial upside of diversification, right? Beyond the moral argument, what are the tangible financial opportunities for an organization that intentionally diversifies its donor base? How does opening the door to new communities actually increase the total money raised, and which major demographic is most often overlooked?
Yeah. You know how, like, this year because when government funding went down for a lot of organizations. And so everyone was talking about, you got to diversify your revenue sources, but they were talking about, you can't just rely on foundations or corporate. You also have you got to have a good mid and major gift program. You've got to have, so those kind of strategies, diversifying your revenue. But You also really need to think about diversifying your donor base,
Yeah.
because when you're not doing that, you're losing out on revenue from other communities that would give to you if you reached out to them.
Yeah.
And
Right.
you're not doing that. So it's smart to expand your own market by doing that and
Mhm.
engaging other communities, because it will increase, the total number of your households that are giving. It
Mm.
improves retention because you're expanding the types of donors that are a part of your mission now, and that fosters, I think, a lot of loyalty. You attract corporate and foundation partners that are really prioritized around equity centered grantees. So I mean, if you look at Latinx, Asian American, African American wealthy individuals, that is the most rapidly growing segment of U.S. philanthropy. In fact, Black donors give a higher proportion of their disposable income to charity than white donors do. But they're rarely ever cultivated as major gift prospects.
It's true.
So engaging those donors, I think, through culturally competent stewardship can lead to more revenue.
Absolutely.
So it's not just, there's a morally we should be including more people into our work, but there's a huge financial upside that we're losing out on by not including other donors of color. Um, and
That's going to
then,
be one that I really want us to get into next year, because I think,
yeah,
to your point, I mean, all that's facts, so facts, but it's like, I think also people don't understand how if you have not done your homework and kind of really went into those different communities and put in time, sweat equity, and built authentic, real relationships,
yes,
I think that's where most charities get frustrated. They're like, oh, well, that person don't want to give if they, Asian or whatever. Now, well, have you really put in the time? Have you really went
exactly.
in and put in the time and to understand how that community works, right? Because every
Yes,
community has a certain way that it moves, right? And you have to give respect to each community
yes,
to understanding how it moves. And you can't just go in, well, we're the charity. Now, keep in mind what I said.
yeah,
The charities now don't really per se have ownership. It's really the donors and the philanthropists. They do.
yeah.
So if you don't give respect to each community, you're going to kind of be left out.
And what we know from research is that high net worth donors of color, particularly like first generation wealth
Hmm.
holders,
Yep.
they prefer relationship driven engagement
Absolutely.
versus transactional solicitations. You
Absolutely.
can't have that unless you are in those communities. You are having those discussions. You are gaining that trust.
Yep.
But that also means, from the nonprofit perspective, you need to diversify the type of fundraisers that you have. You need to have fundraisers of color, if you are also going to be in those communities and those different groups of donors.
Oh,
You have
absolutely.
you have to represent.
And I was talking to another person, a sector colleague in a different state. And they were talking about how one of their donors told them they had a donor of color, and the donor said it was hard for them to see themselves in their organization. They didn't see themselves in it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
here you got the frontline person trying to do all they can to be like, no, but we really do care, right? And the organization does care, right? He was they were having a really hard time getting the donor to say, hey, we are doing this. So then that goes back to what you're talking about, making sure that you're having those internal communications with your marketing
yeah,
team, your
yeah.
board, or whoever, to be like, look, we gotta, here's an opportunity to get better, right? We can bring in more people if we just kind of switch this up just a little bit. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's right.
So yeah. So again, that's why this
It's
podcast will
going to be a
be,
big one.
yeah, it's gonna be big. Let's ask one more, right? Let's see. The talent retention asset.
Yeah,
The the fundraising sector struggles with staff turnover. How does
correct.
building an inclusive and equitable internal culture in the development office become a core fundraising asset? One that helps you attract, retain, and empower top talent who in turn drive greater long-term revenue?
Yeah. Well, first of all, turnover is really expensive. It costs doing studies, it costs between 6 and 9 months of a person's salary
Mm,
per position lost.
wow.
So that's expensive. But then in fundraising, it's even more because when you are shuffling frontline fundraisers in and out, let's say every 13 to 15 months, you're never really establishing those deep relationships with donors.
Mm, mm,
And so, and one goes, then you bring on another one. And I've heard from donors like, that organization does some good work, but I have to tell you, something's not right because
mm.
I have a new representative calling me every year, a different person's on, working with me. And it makes me think something's wrong over there,
Ooh.
you know?
And
Okay,
Jeff,
so
hold up, hold up,
that's
hold up.
from just
And you said a donor told you this. I
yes,
mentioned this. See, so
yes.
that's yeah.
But when you have an inclusive, equitable internal culture, you attract more diverse candidates who have broader networks.
Yep.
You retain staff because you're fostering psychological safety
Mm,
and really being transparent on their career pathway. So, for example, you can't just oh, we need to diversify and let's hire a fundraiser of color and everyone else is white. That's the culture. I mean, you probably have been in this situation and it's not comfortable and many of those fundraisers don't feel safety.
mm.
And so you have to create that environment prior to all of that happening. And
That's
then
real talk, Jeff.
with that, then you're empowering emerging leaders. So you're bringing on a more diverse staff that eventually will lead to more emerging leaders of color to help shape the strategy, which I was talking about the first
Yep.
thing,
Yep.
where it was too homogeneous in the decision-making power. So that leads to um, a more diverse strategy as well. And as a result, you get greater continuity of donor relationships and then a team that's really emotionally invested in the mission.
Yeah.
Um, and that's really a key ingredient, I think, for consistent year over year growth and revenue. So this talent thing is really important,
Yeah.
and we'll get into that a lot
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, but these are just some of the questions, guys, that we're going to be talking about again. And want to be clear, this is not, we are not bashing anybody. We want to be clear. This is simply a conversation, things that we all think about, whether you say it or not, like you think about it. Right. And so again, like we talked about, there's no need to explain what's already understood. We've been through that. So now
Yeah.
how do we move forward? Right. That's why groups like AADO, Black Canadian Fundraisers, just Rising Colors Professionals, all these groups, exist for support. Some of our brothers, one of my Asian brothers in AADO, Shane Carlin, who's doing a phenomenal job in the Asian philanthropic community. Um, some of my brothers in the Hispanic community doing some big work there. So this is
Yeah.
how things are moving now, and
Yeah.
you're gonna have to connect with Black women fundraisers, like all the things like this is kind of, if you want to say new, this is the sector now. This is not, this is the sector now, and whether you accept it or not, that's left up to you. But yeah, but here it is, and it's not going anywhere.
Right. All right. We've got 2 more questions going
Oh,
on.
that's right. That's right. Okay. Last two. Okay. Well, here's a good one, Joe.
Okay.
Actionable stewardship and major gifts. How does an equitable approach to donor stewardship change the conversation with major donors? Can you share a concrete example of how changing a specific policy or practice
Yeah.
led to a deeper relationship or larger, more sustained gift?
Yeah. Okay. So this is how I think equity changes donor cultivation. Equitable stewardship really recognizes donors as partners in community change, not just capital. So it's not about just their money. It's about them being real partners.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the shift in the conversation is something like what we need from you to what we can achieve together.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, it's just kind of overall, that's kind of how you think about it. Um, but a concrete example, so I am aware of this one organization. They revised their naming policy. So
Mm.
they had this, you know, how they, certain donors, they give them a type of, you're a leadership
Yep.
donor or that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So they had prioritized large single source donors. Um, and what they did was they changed it to coalition naming, recognizing collective giving from
Mm.
community members. So they would take small gifts and pooled from
Wow.
like BIPOC led businesses and created a coalition kind of name thing.
Love that. Love that.
And so it wasn't about just individual, but a collective.
Mhm.
So they got broader ownership from the new community center that
Mm.
they were trying to get it, funding for, new relationships with the business owners who were previously left out because those businesses couldn't give, $100,000 gift or a 10,000, they were able to pool together these
Yep.
smaller gifts. But even so, they got a six-figure gift from a major donor who loved the new approach. Like they were
Mm.
inspired, so they gave a big gift for that. So I think when donors see that equity is actually embedded in your practice and it's not just language, going back to, are you doing the stuff, not just
Yep.
saying the stuff? Trust from the donors and investment deepens.
So you bring up another good point, right? Everybody wants unrestricted funds, right?
Yeah.
So, but what you just said, but when you can show impact and clear demonstration, you will get unrestricted funds when it's made very clear, right?
Yes.
And that's what I heard from that, right? That's
Yeah.
that's that's nice. That's good work.
Yeah.
So shout out to the organization. Shout out. So last question. Here we go. The
Yeah.
future risk of resistance. 5 years from now, what would be the biggest difference in terms of financial health and organization relevance between a development office that embraces equity and inclusion and one that resists it? Uh-oh.
Okay. All right. So I think there are five major areas. First one I'll talk about. So revenue streams.
Uh-oh.
So equity embracing organizations, they will see diverse, resilient, community integrated donor bases
Mm.
versus the equity resistant, we'll call them the equity resistant organizations. They're going to have a shrinking pool of aging homogenous donors.
Whoa.
Okay. That's just going to happen.
Mm.
The next is reputation. So the equity embracing organizations, they're going to be seen as trustworthy, relevant, and future oriented versus the equity resistant ones are going to be viewed as outdated and just disconnected. And then you look at just talent, that area. The equity embracing organizations, they're going to retain creative, diverse, mission aligned fundraisers. The equity resistant organizations, they're going to have high turn, low morale, and limited innovation. And then the next one is partnerships. So the community embracing ones, they're going to be eligible for equity focused corporate, government, and foundation funding. And the equity resistant, they're going to miss out on all those major growth opportunities. And then finally, sustainability. So the equity embracing organizations, they're really going to be built for the long term. They're going to be adaptable and they're going to have belonging.
Mm-hmm.
The equity resistant organizations, they are going to be financially fragile. And then culturally, they'll be just tone deaf.
Mm.
So that's those are pretty stark, the difference between equity embracing and equity resistant organizations over the next 5 years. So, I mean, if you're a nonprofit and you haven't really embraced this, you're going to be in trouble. You are going to be in trouble. I don't care what this new current administration is promoting. And we're already seeing the backlash of this administration and just their hatred that they're spewing. We are going to be moving this way.
Mm.
So I really think that ultimately nonprofits that resist equity, they're going to lose funding and they'll lose legitimacy. But those that embrace it really will redefine what effective philanthropy is going to look like in the next generation.
Wow, Jeff. Hey man, that's a mic drop right there, man. That's big talk.
I mean, I think this is why all five of these questions that you you sent me several weeks ago, and I've been pondering them for a long time now, is so important, and why we want to really use these 5 questions to launch this for Real Talk for Real Fundraisers, because this is important stuff.
Yeah.
And we've got to, everyone's right now talking, what are the trends for 2026? Everyone wants trends. That's the big thing. What's big? This area right here should be one of the things that you really tackle as a nonprofit. These 5 questions are things that you need to tackle, and that's why we want to get into it. So,
man, we are excited. Again, this is just trying to help the sector get better. We all win together, right?
That's right.
And so this is what it's about. And so just having real talk. Again, not calling out anybody in the organization. We just trying to just make people. Our job here, guys, is to make you think. It's to make you think about what if and what could be, and what's your part in it, right? And how will you help the sector that we all love, that we all got into to make the world a better place? All the things that we know and say, but what's going to be your part?
Exactly.
Now is not the time to kind of sit on the sideline and just kind of wait for everybody else to do their thing. Nope, got to jump in. You don't have to, but it would help. But some of us are really jumping in. As they say, 10 toes down. We all in.
Yeah. Well, this has been fun. I'm really glad we finally got to launch this together. Right? And 2026 is going to be awesome. And I'm loving going to be grappling with these questions with you, Chris. I think cool. That's what Real Talk's all about. We're going to have some great guests on.
Yep.
We will get in depth about all of these questions. But for the listeners here, Real Talk for Real Fundraisers in 2026, this is going to be part of this, along with some of the other topics that we'll always be discussing. This is going to be a reoccurring one that Chris and I are going to co-host for 2026. So we look forward to that. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.